Hi guys, and welcome back to SN Battle Reports, and today we don't quite have a battle report for you. We have a small Codex retrospective for your favorite golden boys, the Adeptus Custodes. So, this is basically going to be just a short, like I said, it's a retrospective video where we discuss a couple of little things about the new book that they've got, and essentially just the things that I think are worth mentioning the most. So, essentially we'll go over the standout things about the book, the way that I personally think I'll be playing them in the future, to events or even on battle reports, as well as any little combos or tricks that people are actually doing already with them that I think are worth mentioning. So, coming up right next, we're going to be doing a segment on the shield hosts that I think are worth mentioning. Right, so as a really quick note I also want to mention is what we've seen recently from the Custodes events. So in a recent event that was pretty big in the UK, we saw 6 Custodes lists in the top 10, which is absurd. Like, that is ridiculous. But I think that just goes to show how well balanced the actual book is. I think the book has a lot of internal balances. So you find yourself in scenarios where your playstyle might lend itself better to certain units, but other units are also worth taking. So you have a lot of things that are basically always competing with those slots with each other. So I think it really helps list building, because if you are somebody that, for example, let's say you love bikes, everyone loves bikes, but let's say you really like bikes, going really heavily in on bikes and stuff like that, it's totally viable, especially with some of the builds that we're going to be seeing. I think you could run 6, 9 Virtus Praetors even, because even 9 Virtus Praetors is rounding up to like 750 points in your list. You still have plenty of points to play around there with your troop choices and your HQs and all the other nice stuff that you get access to. So, yeah, that was just a quick mention that I just wanted to brush over quickly, just so you guys can get a bit of an idea of how strong this book actually is. So the 2 main builds that I think we will be seeing going forward, and we've already been seeing with the new book, are the Emperor's Chosen, obviously, which, as everybody knows, is one of the best, if not the best, shield host, and the Shadowkeeper's shield host. So a quick touch up on why the Emperor's Chosen one is so good. The main thing that Custodes struggle with are dealing with mortal wounds. You know, armies that are very, very good at doing mortal wounds to you and stuff like that can rinse through your Custodes, because you don't tend to have a lot of models on the board and a lot of assets. So, you know, if you do 9 mortal wounds to a unit of Custodian Guard, you've now removed a Custodian Guard unit, and that can sort of feel bad. So the Emperor's Chosen essentially eliminates half of that worry. You now end up with a stat line which is essentially 2 up, 4 up invulnerable, 4 up feel no pain against mortals. And that basically just means that your army that's already super durable becomes even more durable. Helping out as well is the fact that the other part of the shield host gives you a reroll to hit or to wound with every single unit. So think of it like a free command point on every single unit whenever it shoots or fights. I think that is just fantastic. Custodes is an army that is hyper efficient already, right? Most of your things are hitting on 2s. They're normally rerolling 1s to hit and or wound. So being able to squeeze out any little efficiency from every single model when they cost you 80 points each, or 60 points each, or 35, 40 points each, you really, really notice it when you start to, you know, get those salvo launchers through. And I know these are hurricane bolters, but they should be salvo launchers. We have some on the way. So you really want your army to be very efficient for its points and be doing more than its points are worth, essentially. So I think that the Emperor's Chosen reroll lets you do that very, very easily. The other standout of Emperor's Chosen is their shield host strat. Their shield host strat allows you to put one of your units and basically make them count as any other shield host you want, which, for context, means, let's say you're playing against a melee heavy army, something with lots of attacks, but you can turn a unit into Shadowkeepers, charge that unit in, and the unit that you charge into now loses 1 attack from every single model, obviously to a minimum of 1, but it helps out so much. Let's say you're playing into something where you need to try and get your shield captain on jet bike, you need him to be a bit more efficient. You can turn him into a solo watch, so he can fall back and charge again. You can obviously couple that in with the stratagem that allows the bikes to fall back shoot as well, so you can now fall back shoot and charge in again. There are some little combinations that Emperor's Chosen gives you, and I think it's the overall flexible package that it brings that is so unique and so essentially devastating, because, like I said, you're playing a defensive line. Your defensive line becomes more defensive and now has options. It has an optionality which you don't get from the other shield hosts. Conversely to that, Shadowkeepers adds durability to your army in a slightly different way. So obviously it adds that durability by giving your opponents that -1 attack on every single unit. But it also does so in the form of the stratagem that they get, which basically means that when they get shot by something, you can reduce the strength of that weapon by 1. Again, incoming fire is something that Custodians have to deal with until they get to you. We are seeing a lot of shooty Custodian lists running around right now, but for the most part, if you can make your opponent's shooting worse, it just means your guys are going to survive that much longer. For context, I know it's something that we're not seeing a lot, but for example, Marine Volkites, which are strength 6, into Virtus Praetors, which is toughness 6. But if you lower the strength of that down to 5, now they're wounding you on 5s. And suddenly, wounding Custodians on 5s does not sound great anymore. So they're just like small interactions like that, where I think Shadow Keepers are very good. Obviously, we've got the Lock Warden Warlord trait, which I think is phenomenal. Essentially, you give the Warlord trait to a model. Whenever that model makes an attack against a character, they can't take invulns. So you've got an Archon running around, being a nuisance with a Shadow Field. You can shoot at it, you can get into combat with it, it can't take that 2-up against you anymore. And suddenly, you're looking at a lot of dead characters that would otherwise be annoying to deal with. So you've got your Archons, you've got your Succubus, even things like Bellicor. Bellicor is a very, very big nuisance. And being able to just ram into Bellicor, throw a bunch of attacks, shoot at him first with a salvo launcher, you can get rid of those really pesky characters that rely on that invulnerable save. Now again, there are general builds for both of these armies, and I do think that there are some nuances to the way you build your lists when you're playing Emperor's Chosen or if you're playing Shadow Keepers. So we'll touch upon that in the next segment coming up next. Alright guys, so we're going to go straight into the list concepts. So, when you're playing an Emperor's Chosen list, you lean into 2 different elements or aspects of the Custodes book, which you don't lean as much into on the Shadow Keeper side, in my opinion. So, when you're running an Emperor's Chosen list, you're looking for what I consider to be utility units and a lot of shooting. Now, obviously, Custodes are great in combat as well. They're naturally good in combat, but again, their shooting tends to be lackluster unless you actually like tech into it. So, with that being said, when you're running Emperor's Chosen, you're going to be seeing a lot of salvo launchers, because obviously you get that free reroll to hit or to wound. So you want to be maximizing that with the salvo launchers, with things like the Achilles Dreadnoughts, which have the spears. I run my Achilles Dreadnoughts with Twin Adrathic Destructors over the Lastrum Bolters, which people do run. I just like having the extra damage 3 weapon, especially in a meta right now where we're seeing a lot of -1 damage. Turning things from damage 3 to damage 2 doesn't bother me all too much, and it still can create a sizable dent into some of the bigger things, for example, Crusher Stampede. I think between salvo launchers and your Achilles Dreadnoughts with their damage 3 weapons, you kind of have your shooting package covered, and then everything else is just already efficient and good in close combat. Whereas when you're playing a Shadow Keepers list, I think Shadow Keepers has a lot of strengths lying in the MSU builds. Now, I know Custodes are regularly very MSU. They're all 3 models, 4 models, sometimes you see 5 models. But I think the things that they really like to lean into are things such as the 1-man units of Alaris Terminators. They are just annoying to deal with. They are things that can obviously come down, they can deep strike, they can charge into opponents, and they become more durable because the enemy loses out on that attack against you. So you can literally tie up things and be stuck in there and really create problems for your opponents just by tying up or tagging a lot of different things. And again, there's still going to be durable stuff, right? They're still Custodes, they're still Terminator Custodes. You still have access to all your stratagems on them. But I do think that the single Alaris Terminators have a better place in the Shadow Keeper's house, where you can essentially also use the -1 strength against any ranged attacks, which just eke out those little bits of durability. Now granted, Virtus Praetors are still fantastic in those Shadow Keepers builds, because you can also make them survive way longer. So you will be seeing them obviously as well in Shadow Keeper builds, but I just feel like this becomes one of the standout units in an Emperor's Chosen army. So one quick thing I want to touch upon is the list that I'm personally going to be playing for a little while just to test it out. I've tried out different variants of different builds so far. A few of them are battle reports. I had a couple of them in my head. And the one that I've settled on now for events, it's an upcoming RTT, which I'm going to obviously be taking the Custodes to, is an Emperor's Chosen battalion. Now, without going into too much detail as to what is in the list, The list revolves around essentially the Virtus Praetors that I want to be running because they're just very, very good. They're just very efficient. Trajan, who in my eyes is an auto-include in any list you take him in. He refunds you CP. He also has a way to refund you CP as the game goes on in a 5. He can rearrange your katas, which is, for me, one of the biggest abilities that he's got. He can just do so much for you, and he does a lot of the heavy lifting for the list with regards to rerolls. You're also going to be seeing a shield captain on Stone Eagle Jetbike in my list. Didn't want to run 3 characters, but I think the 3 characters are just so pivotal to the list that they just have to make an appearance. Into the troop choices, you don't see them on here because I am currently painting them up, but I do have a unit of 5 Sisters of Silence. I think they're the prosecutors, the ones with the bolt guns, just normal troops, because the one thing that the Custodes always struggle with is keeping units back to either to hold objectives or to basically zone out your backfield. So this is what the Sisters of Silence do very, very well, and they're relatively cheap as well for what they do. So it means I only need to keep back, say, a unit of 3 Shield Guard alongside them, as opposed to a unit of 3 Shield Guard and a unit of Spears. So it cuts off of the amount of points that are just sat at the back doing nothing. Following through with that, one of my new favorite units in the book are the Wardens. I think the Wardens are just fantastic. Apart from the fact that they've got the bodyguard rule, which, as everyone knows from Marines, from Sisters, and now obviously from Tau with their slightly more broken bodyguard rule, Wardens offer you essentially a really, really durable package in an army that is already durable again. They also have 4 attacks each as opposed to 3, which means that if they happen to get stuck in, you're not just looking at 9 attacks from a unit of 3, you're looking at 12 attacks from a unit of 3. And the most important thing is you'll normally see these units bunkered behind an obscuring piece of terrain 3 inches from something like the Dawn Eagle Jetbike Captain, and he'll just be shooting a salvo launcher all game long until he finally feels that it's time for it to make a charge. So I think this obviously is one of the better units you're going to see. I think everyone should be taking at least a unit of 3 basically. Also, one final notable mention are the actual Contempt Dreadnoughts, either one of them. I think they are both fantastic. The Achilles obviously is a monster in close combat. It's D3 plus 3 damage. You can give it the Eternal Penitent to get the extra attack. It's got insane shooting as well with multiple damage 3 weapons. But I feel like the Galatus, which gets overlooked a little bit, or overshadowed better said, because of how good the Achilles is, the Galatus has a very, very special place in that it has retained that 4-up invulnerable save, which the Achilles hasn't. So it's gained that bit of durability that the other one has lost, and also obviously has that -1 to be hit in combat. So it has less output, obviously. It's meant to have less output, but it does get more attacks because it gets the extra ones in the charge, and it has that extra bit of durability that these don't have. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. This is the end of the short retrospective video that we've done. If you like it, please leave a comment down below and let us know, because obviously we like to make content that you guys enjoy and that creates conversation for us all. And if you're looking for any more content, you can head over to snbattlereports.com, or you can join the YouTube button down below, which is not available in some countries, so that's why we've got the website as well. Where basically for £1 a week, you're getting access to extra battle reports, behind the scenes content. We're doing a bunch of small things like this, retrospective videos, videos about competitive play or state of the meta, all sorts of stuff. So if you do want to help support us and help keep all the lights on in here, please head over to those links down below.